It's 7:01.
Yeah, we know.
All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the HQ Ward Campus, and welcome to the Community Legislative Committee meeting. My name is Dave Wicks. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here. I'm gonna do some brief introductions for those that are in the room, and I'm going to hand it off to Linda Goldsmith, one of our members and chair of this committee, to introduce our guests and get us rolling. So why don't we start here to my right?
My name is Paul Shannon. I'm a special education teacher over at over at IEC ISLF Academic Center. I teach earth science and life science over there.
And Brittany Van Gordon, I'm one of the assistant principals at Drum Learning Center.
My name is Jasmine Montenegro. I'm one of the student ex officios for Eastern Suffolk.
I'm one of the visual administrators for special education.
Elizabeth Leonard, program administrator for special education.
Kai Watkins, I'm principal Miss Sarah.
Justin Kober, superintendent principal at Oyster Ponds in Ormond.
Kim Letter, special education teacher at West Hampton Beach Learning Center.
Jenny Lloyd, principal at West Hampton Beach Learning Center.
Paul Wimmer, I do instructional technology for special education.
Maria Delacroix, I'm the board clerk for Eastern Suffolk.
Vanessa Mims,
Fred Welch, Faith's dad.
I'm Edgar Shepard, a plumbing teacher at BTC.
Really trying trustee.
Lisa Israel, board president.
Brian Billy, trustee, Eastern ESBOCES, and fan of the Welch family and fan of Big here. I let my pom-poms in the car, but I'm You're gone. Very excited to be here.
Linda Goldsmith, chair of the Legislative Committee, East Suffolk ESBOCES board member. And this is Faith Welch. I'm going to read a brief. Oh, we're going to say it with
States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's so important. I'm so happy to be consented to be our speaker. Faith, I don't know if it's in here, maybe it is. Oh, yes, it is. Let me read this. Okay, Faith Welch is a senior at Greenport High School who is passionate about justice, leadership, creating spaces where young people feel seen, heard, and understood. Within her school and community, she serves in many leadership roles, such as student council president, being her district's first student ex officio board member, founder and president of her school's first African American Studies Club, and a youth ambassador for Coming to the Table, a national racial healing organization. She has received many honors for her work in advocacy and leadership, including being New York's 2025 recipient of the National Princeton Prize in Race Relations, as well as being named this past year's Suffolk Times Community Leader of the Year, making Faith the youngest recipient of this honor ever. Faith plans to pursue a career in law with the goal of becoming a lawyer for wrongfully incarcerated African Americans. She is also the founder of For Us Always, a youth-centered Instagram platform that highlights Black history, culture, and voices through daily informative and uplifting social media posts. I've asked Faith to tell us a little bit about herself, and at some points I'm going to stop, so I'm sure you'll have questions.
Hi everyone, my name is Faith Welch. I'm a senior at Greenport High School, and I'm really honored to be here with all of you tonight. Whenever someone introduces me with my titles and my awards, it sounds very neat and organized, and it makes it seem like I had some kind of master plan from the very beginning, but I didn't. It was a lot messier than that. And I think that matters because when we talk about success, we usually only hear the polished version. We hear the outcomes, the highlights, the things that look good on paper, but we don't really hear about the moments where things are confusing, uncomfortable, or don't fully make sense yet. So instead of listing accomplishments, I want to tell you how I actually got here because it didn't start with a plan. It developed with a series of moments and experiences that changed the way I saw things. But before any of that, I have to start with how I was raised. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and that shaped me in ways I'm still trying to understand. Being the oldest means people look to you first. You learn how to step up even when you're not completely right. And you learn how to stand up for other people because you're not just thinking about yourself anymore. And that came from my parents. The values that they raised me with taught me to do what's right even when it's uncomfortable. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that foundation ended up shaping many decisions I made later on. The first moment that really shifted things for me came in 10th grade. I took an African American studies class, and one day we read about a slave burial ground in Oregon. And I remember stopping and thinking, wait, what do you mean there's a slave burial ground 5 minutes from where I live? And I had never heard about it. That moment stood out to me. Not just because it was surprising, but because it made me realize that there was history right in front of me that I had never been taught to see. And that changed the way I looked at everything. What started as a class assignment didn't stay a class assignment for very long. I started going to events, I started talking to people, I started asking questions that weren't a part of the original assignment. And as I kept going, I realized I wasn't just learning information, I was uncovering stories of real people that had been overlooked or purposely hidden despite all of their contributions. So I started presenting my work outside of school. I connected with organizations like Coming to the Table, which is a national racial healing organization. I kept researching, I kept writing, I kept sharing. And eventually I found myself traveling to Harlem every Saturday to study at the Schomburg Center under their Junior Scholars Program. And that wasn't an easy travel. But I went because I needed to be in a space where people understood what I was learning, where I could grow and where I could be challenged, and that experience pushed me even further. That same year, I started my school's first African American Studies Club because I didn't want to be the only one having these conversations. And as all of this was happening, more opportunities started opening up. The national chapter of Coming to the Table reached out to me and asked me to be their youth ambassador. Then there were more recognitions. I was named the Star of Tomorrow from Suffolk County. I received a Suffolk County proclamation, and I won the Princeton Prize in Race Relations. And everything felt great, but I also want to be very honest about something that is much less glamorous than all of the recognition. There's a cost to all of this. And I think people love to talk about the outcome of doing meaningful work. They love to talk about all of the awards, the speeches, the positions, the newspaper articles, but they do not always want to talk about what it costs a person, especially a young person.
So I'm going to stop here. Faith has given us a lot of information. And I want to know if anyone has any questions as to how she got involved. What I know, she said that the slave cemetery, and actually I live near Orient, and I understand there was some sort of a brouhaha about that, whether they were really slaves or whether they weren't. It was the Historical Society had gotten involved in that. And, you know, I've always known it's been there, but I've never thought about it in any way like Faith did. So if you have questions, I want to stop now and let you ask a few. Maybe was that question.
Well, how did you find out about it?
So I took an African American Studies class, and it was the first class actually, so we didn't really have a curriculum. It was brought to our Board of Ed by a student, and it got started like immediately without even having a curriculum yet. And so our teacher was kind of just looking for local things to teach us about, and we found that article from Steve Wick wrote it in the Suffolk Times.
Oh, that's cool. So you had a class that just started like
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it was really difficult, and then it was gone. Like I was in it the only year it was at our school. Like it was gone next year.
Well, I'm going to ask that question. Oh, Justin.
Yeah, so you're creating a place for difficult conversations in a place that maybe not used to having that amongst peers, right? Like you said, that hard to do with adults, but tell me about the struggles or the challenges or the outcomes of trying to have that dialogue started like in a formal structure with peers in the school setting.
It's honestly been really hard, and like Greenport's already a small school. Our club is only like 8 kids. Because a lot of people don't want to go out of their comfort zone, especially they don't want to join clubs that are cultural. Like they want to join things that all of their friends can be in. A lot of kids don't want to be in something that's exclusive to them because it separates them. So it's been really difficult, if I'm being honest.
Well, I have a question. I know your mom, I know your dad, and I know your relatives, and you were biracial. Okay, so does that give you any issue when you are talking about Black studies or things like that?
Yeah, definitely. When I went to Harlem and did the Junior Scholars Program, I was definitely like looked at crazy, like you're not even Black, why do you care about it? I definitely had experienced that way more out there than here because I feel like I'm more of a minority here. There it was like I was on the opposite end of the spectrum. Yeah.
Greenport has always been a very embracing diverse community. You know, over the years, I've been there for 40 years. People come and people go. Do you find yourself now reaching out to another, Greenport, many Latino and brown students? It's not just one face. Do they feel comfortable also, excuse me, also joining?
Yeah, I believe they do. There's also there's a multicultural club that all of the Latino students are in, and they run it and they bring all of their different cultures. It's kind of a night to show that it's not just Hispanic kids. It's there's Guatemalan people, there's Mexican people, we show all of those different things. So I think a lot of them do, but the language barrier is kind of a big issue.
And I think that event is going to take place April 29th when Rotary puts a peace poll in
Yes.
And I'm going to interject here that I've been there many times because I teach state formation. So I've been there many times, and it's not just people of brown skin. They have Italian, Irish, English, Scottish, and everybody brings their culture in. Whomever would like to have a booth and bring their culture in. And there's all kinds of foods, different foods. There's the dress from the country. I think someone actually
They do dances.
Yeah, they do. And it's really they will charge you, I think, $5 to come in. If you don't have $5, that's fine. You go in anyway. And it's really a lot of fun. I've been there several years in a row, and it's a lot of fun. And I think the elementary school also is part of that.
Yeah, anybody can come to
Anybody. And it's really well attended, and it's really a lot of fun, actually. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Did anybody have any more questions before Faith goes on? Because she has a lot more things to tell us.
I just had a general comment of support. I'm so grateful for your community activism, and that I also attend some of the coming to the table meetings. I've been to community events where you're the featured speaker and everybody's like, it's great, And then I just commend you as a young person for balancing school and work and schoolwork and extracurriculars. Can you just talk about your commitment to the community, but also how do you do that? How do you go to all those meetings and you balance things and you have friends and you have a social life and you work? I don't know, when I think of the things you go, I don't know how you do it all. So can you just talk about the difficulty of balancing that? And it seems like you've balanced that, but maybe it's different, when you talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know how I balance it. It's really hard. I'm really grateful for my parents. They drive me anywhere I need to go whenever I have an event, so that's nice. But I think one of the biggest ways that I'm able to get through it is I have a lot of people around me that are rooting for me, like you and Liz and my family and Linda and people like that in my life that encourage me to keep going. So
that was my next comment. I wanted to make sure we got your back. We love you. I think you feel that. Well, I'm glad that you said.
Thank you.
Anybody else right now?
Okay. For me, I feel like part of what it cost me was my likability, my ignorance, and my comfortability. It cost me my ignorance because once I started learning what I learned, I could not go back. I couldn't unlearn it. I couldn't return to a version of myself that moved through the world without seeing certain things. And there's a certain comfort in ignorance. There's a certain ease in not noticing what is wrong. But once your eyes are open, they're open. It cost me my comfortability because as I became more educated and more aware, it became uncomfortable for me to sit in spaces where people were saying things that were against what I knew was true. Whether that was ignorance, stereotypes, dismissal, or just people spewing hate, I couldn't sit there and let it slide. And that is not easy, especially in high school. It's not easy to be in classrooms, friend groups, or public spaces and feel that tension in your chest because you know something is wrong and you're deciding whether or not you're going to say something. And it cost me some of my likability too, because standing up for what is right does not always make people like you. Sometimes it makes them uncomfortable, sometimes it makes them defensive, and that was hard for me. There are moments when it would have been easier to just smile, keep it moving, and not say anything, but I had reached a point where I could not do that anymore. Then came a moment that for a minute made me want to step back from all of my work, but in the end made me understand why it's so important. So last June, I was in the top 5 runners-up for Strawberry Queen. And before going to the Strawberry Festival, my boyfriend and I were waiting for our Uber outside of King Cullen. It was just a normal day. We got into the Uber, got a little bit down the road, and then all of a sudden we were pulled over. At first, we thought maybe our driver had done something, but then it became clear that it was not about him. It was about us. The officers had him roll down the window, and they were investigating us. We had to give our IDs because someone had reported us saying they saw us stealing cars. And even now when I say that out loud, part of me still wants to laugh because it's so absurd. Like, out of all the lies we can make up, stealing cars. But in that moment, it was not funny. In that moment, it was dehumanizing and it was humiliating. And what hit me the hardest was that I had done everything, quote unquote, right. I was involved in everything. I was student council president. I was in honor society, theater, and so much more. And I had poured myself into my school and my community consistently. And in that moment, none of that mattered. That experience taught me one of the most important lessons I've learned so far. There is only so much you can do to try to prove yourself to people when they have already decided to see what they think of you before they see you.
I have a question. I'm curious. I think I don't know if I've spoken to you about this, but how did the police treat you after they got your IDs and everything?
So initially, like, they kind of made it seem like it was the driver. They were kind of interrogating him. And then they had him roll down the window and they started asking us questions like, what were we doing in the parking lot? What were we waiting for? Just normal questions. And then
did they tell you you did not have to answer? I'm just curious.
No. And then all of a sudden they started getting kind of like hostile and they were like, you were stealing cars. Well, not they. It was one police officer that got like that. The other one was still like in the back. And so then they took our IDs, and then the other one that wasn't helping us came over and was like very nice. The initial guy was really like rude, and then he went back, and the other one came and was like, "Sorry guys, like we ran your IDs, and we saw the security footage, and we literally were just sitting there." So yeah, that's all that happened, and then they sent us off.
What jurisdiction was that?
Southfield Town. It was on the way to the Strawberry Festival, so it was like coming from that kingdom.
Or Southern Sheriff?
It was a local cop, yeah. He was actually in my school.
It's wild. That's like you're carjacking. Why would you get into an Uber and you just use the car you jacked?
So I don't know. It made no sense. Literally none of it.
I just wonder why since you weren't being arrested, obviously. Yeah. I'm wondering what happened to the person who decided that you were stealing cars as you were paying your Uber driver.
Because that is a unlawful use of police resources. They lied. So
I hope hopefully they do that. You did not get the name of the person. No. But does anyone else have any questions? Because that to me is like amazing that would happen. That you would pull over an Uber because someone decided to take an Uber rather than drive without a license or hitchhike or something. It's it's very unbelievable to me. But does anyone else have any questions?
Just a comment of support. I was at the meeting where you talked about that at Greenport Village. And because of what happened to you, I'm a police commissioner in Southfield Town. We reviewed the procedures, just what Linda just said. We checked with the person, but we tried to make it clear that that was a false report and that's against the law. So I just want you to know, I'm sorry that you went through that, and I've gone through things like I told you that you talked to our community. So I just want you to know it's not a perfect situation, but when we heard that one of our kids happened to them, we tried to respond to it. So, and we're working on it. We're not perfect. You know, we can't be responsible for people's crazy ideas. Just like you said, it doesn't make sense logically. So, and you know, that's the horror of discrimination. It's stupid. It doesn't make sense. So how do we pull that veil of ignorance off and see somebody for who they are? It's not just a color or a gender. It's you're a human being. So I'm sorry that happened to you, but I think we're responding in a positive way after what happened.
I commend the way you handled it. You didn't jump up and down screaming with the street and say, "Please be calm." You know, I do commend you. Handled it probably better than I would have. But as Brian said, I knew that the Southfield Town Police the Southfield Town Village were looking into that incident and trying to make sure that it doesn't happen. But then again, you were a pioneer in all of this, so there you go again, you were a pioneer. Unfortunately, not one that you would want to be, but not by choice. Justin, you had a question?
No, it was in some ways covered, but I was curious if you brought that experience to your club for discussion, like amongst peers, and then also like, given that the school researchers have a presence in Southland and all the schools, if there was an opportunity for you to, as Brian said, maybe address that in a proactive, or not proactive, but a sense of leadership. You demonstrated your leadership in various areas, and I think it's a case study as to, a process that was not done the right way, and an opportunity for adults around you and the system around you to learn from it. So it sounds to me like Brian started to address that, but the SROs try to have a positive presence there. So I'm just curious of your experience after the fact with the SROs and stuff.
No, I didn't have any experience with them after the fact. And honestly, after it, like for a little bit, I mean, I talked to people that were close to me about it, but I didn't really want to talk about it. And no, I didn't have any contact with the student resource officers or anything like that, but I did speak at the Southfield Town and Greenport Village joint board meeting about it, and I also spoke about it at the Juneteenth celebration after that.
But how, when you were able to leave and go to the Strawberry Festival, I remember that you put it in for a little while, but in the 60s when I grew up, what would have been said is, okay, back up, don't put yourself in that situation. Be careful. Don't sit at the reward counter. Things like that. Hopefully that was never said to you, I hope. That's good thing. But did you almost feel like you had done something wrong? Because that's kind of a tactic to make someone feel they did something wrong and they really didn't.
Yeah, I felt a lot of feelings. Like I remember crying in the line because I was just so confused. And then also my boyfriend, he's from Queens and he's also Black, so I felt bad that he was put in that position. Like even though he lives in like an area where a lot of things go on, like that's not something that really happens there. Like those officers have a lot to focus on and not like something like that. So I felt really bad putting him in that position. And yeah, I don't know, I've never experienced anything like that, so it was a lot of different emotions. But I don't know if I necessarily felt like I did something bad. I just felt like really like helpless. Like I felt like I couldn't do anything to change.
Does anyone else have any other questions about?
Just a comment. I thank you for sharing that, because when you live in a world of privilege, if you don't hear those stories, sometimes you just don't have, especially that part. So as difficult as that might be for you to share sometimes, the fact that you're able to helps everybody to feel and understand that this is and it's a problem. Everyone, not just on the TV screen. So thank you.
And does it help you move forward with your water question and things like that?
Yeah, definitely, especially getting like reactions.
It takes a lot of be able to stand up in front of people that have everybody's eyes, how they feel what they're hearing and everything, but to be able to share, to be able to talk about it, and be able to have that uncomfortable feeling because you own it. Right? It's yours own. It takes a lot to be able to do that.
I do want to ask something. Is there anyone on Zoom that has any questions? No? Okay. Does anyone else have any comments or questions on that so far? You see why I'm breaking up what she's saying, because she's saying a lot. Okay.
I had been researching these systems and these patterns and these histories, but that was one of the first times I felt it firsthand. It made me understand that no matter how accomplished you are, no matter how polished you are, and no matter how respectable you try to be, you cannot always control the assumptions people place on you. And instead of making me back down, it made me want to continue doing this work even more. I think that experience changed the emotional center of my work. Before that, I was super invested intellectually, historically, and morally. But after that, there was a new layer to it. It became more personal. It wasn't just about what I had learned or uncovered. It was about what I had lived and what I had experienced. That same summer, I was sworn into my school's Board of Education as the first ever student ex officio board member at Greenport. And when I look back on all this, what stands out to me is that none of it began with any sort of certainty or a plan. It began with not understanding something. It began with feeling hurt by what was going on around me and deciding that I wasn't going to look away from that feeling. It began with realizing that injustice is living in my community. It grew through projects and presentations and programs. It was highlighted through awards and recognition, yes, but also through discomfort and real life experiences that tested what I thought I knew. And that's exactly why winning Community Leader of the Year in the Suffolk Times meant so much to me. When I first heard about it, I was really shocked and confused because I didn't even really know what it was. And I definitely thought it was the kind of thing only adults won. And before I won it, it was. I became the youngest recipient of that award. And that means a lot to me, not just because it's an honor, but because it's proof that young people can be taken seriously when they do real work in their communities. And that is why I'm going where I'm going next. In the fall, I plan to attend Barnard College, which is the women's affiliated with Columbia University. And I plan to major in political science and minor in African American studies on a pre-law track. My goal is to become a lawyer for wrongfully incarcerated people, specifically African Americans, because if I can advocate for people who cannot advocate for themselves, that is what I want to do. And I think the message I really want to leave with you is that sometimes the beginning of purpose does not look impressive. Sometimes it looks uncomfortable. Sometimes it looks like a young person asking too many questions. Sometimes it looks like fitting in. And sometimes it looks like a school assignment that you're really intrigued by. And sometimes it looks like being the only one in the room who's bothered by something. But that's okay. And as I am still growing, I am still learning, I am still being challenged, I am still becoming. But I am proud of the fact that I never stopped asking why. Thank you so much for listening to my story.
Well, actually, in a lot of the Hispanic organizations, but a lot of their struggles as well. I've seen you talking at some of their rallies. I've seen the ICE protests with small ones in Greenport on the corners, and then we have a great celebration in Mitchell Park. Our Mitchell Park on Juneteenth. Brian knows, Faith is there. And do you think, and this is this is off the top of it'll be off the top of your head. Greenport School, when I look at it now, and I look at when I was in school, it was 30% African American and 30% white. That was it. That was it. There was I don't think there was any Hispanic, maybe one. But now it's much different. The ratio is different. I think it's 16% Hispanic, 20% African American, 20% white, or whatever.
It's actually 6% African American.
Only 6? Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. I did not realize that. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
That's what I'm sorry. I didn't know.
Lowered a lot.
I'm sorry. Yeah, in the last few years. Do you think? I mean, I have my own opinion, but do you think that by stepping up for other people that disenfranchised, let's put it that way, whether they're, because I think we tend to help people whether they're white or brown, whatever color, it doesn't matter to you, or it shouldn't matter to any of us, but. Do you think that by your work and by also being involved in some of the Hispanic struggles and the disenfranchisement that they're feeling, do you think that helps other people say, oh, well, Faith can do it, I can speak out? Or do you think because of the political climate and the ICE and all of this, that you are actually have to speak for others? And that's a long question, and I'm sorry.
Yes, I think it depends on the group of people. Like there's a lot of students that I know and I'm associated with that are immigrants and are scared to go and speak their mind. I know there was one student who wrote an anonymous poem and it was read for her at the rally. I think that a lot of it can make, like, when someone sees someone like them doing, or their age doing what they're doing, it can make you feel like you can do it. I think definitely I've had that effect on people. Like, a lot of people want, when I leave, to take the position on the board and things like that. So I think I have had that effect. But also there are a lot of kids that are scared to get up there and speak the way I speak. Like I say things without, like, caring sometimes what some people think about or who my audience is, which sometimes I should think about that a little more. But
Why do you say that? Why do you say that? Because it offends people or because
safety.
of safety? Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
But there's a lot of kids that don't have that. There's some privilege that I don't have, but there's a lot of kids that have way less privilege than me. So I think that is a big reason that they don't speak out to the magnitude.
But I see that you're speaking for a little bit. The question.
Oh, I'm just gonna say, I think that line, I'm here to advocate for those who can't advocate for themselves is such an amazing like mindset. You're definitely going really far with that.
Thank you.
Anybody have any comments or questions?
I think both. I have a comment first. One, I want to commend you and your family, right? Because the work that you're doing and the things that you talk about, and what really speaks to me is that the conversations that you're having aren't easy, right? And it has a cost. So I love that you brought up there's a cost to it. So every time we go out and speak about things like this, there's a cost and there's a realistic threat of safety, right? So you're putting yourself in danger, but yet you still continue to move forward and go through this. So, I want to, one, just applaud you for being so young but you don't speak like it. You speak so mature and so wise beyond your years, and you inspire people to come out and to maybe if they don't speak as eloquently as you, to at least feel and think about some of the things that you do. So here, my question for you is, when it gets tough, and it does, I know it does, and it gets tough when really nobody's around and you don't have the audience and you're thinking about the next time you say it, what motivates you to keep going, right? What motivates you to push through some of that things that we have?
I think going back to like what my original goal is to advocate for people that can't advocate for themselves. So I know things get tough and things are hard. Like when you're Brian said, like balancing so many different things, extracurricular, school, and things like that. Things get hard, but when I think about how much it means to me, and I think back to the case. I don't know if you guys know the Central Park 5 case. I think back to that case, and I remember watching that documentary and all of that. And I think back to people like that, and that there's people waiting for and serving all this time that they don't deserve to serve. And so I think things like that are what motivate me to keep going. That my struggles, they're big struggles to me as a teenager, but in the real world, there are worse things that could be happening to me. And there are the people that I can help once I get up and keep going. So I think that's something.
Anyone else have any, comments?
There's a couple of things. There's a theme that I heard that came up a couple of times, which you shared, which is this idea of sometimes to move, and I'm paraphrasing, sometimes to move forward, you're not going to be 100% prepared. Sometimes it's the uncertainty that has to push you forward. And there's one line towards the end that I'm going to steal from you, which is, I think, something to the effect of sometimes the beginning of purpose does not look impressive. Mm-hmm. That is, in general life purpose, that is such a huge concept because so many times we're afraid to move forward with anything because of the unknown. And you're presenting the unknown as what's pushing you forward. It's such a strong concept, and I just want to thank you for. It's something I needed to hear tonight, to be honest with you. So I appreciate that. It's such a strong concept.
Well, I'm going to make a comment. My grandson graduated last year from Greenport, John. I'm sure you know him. And he came to me last year and he goes, "Why do we have to have a Black History Month?" I said, "Well," "Let me ask you a question. How did slaves get to America?" "Well, we brought them over here. That's how Black people got here." I said, "Oh, really?" "Yep." I said, "Oh." I said, "Well, why don't you look at your map and see?" He's Sicilian, by the way. "Look at Sicily. Look at Libya. You can swim, except for the sharks." I said, "People migrated. They migrated to Sicily. They married. They went up the coast. They went over, into France, all this." I said, "So do you think that the only way was as slavery?" And he goes, "Well, I guess not." I said, "Well, are you getting taught that in your American history book?" And he said, "Well, no, we taught that the Black people, American people got here because people got them as slaves." I said, "Well," then he did. I said, "But there are other ways. So that's why you have a Black History Month." So he said, well, and he's not a bookworm, you know, he's not crazy about books, trust me. You know, really he's not. He said, so maybe what we should do is maybe we should teach American history more, and maybe we should teach it longer and try to put some of that into our American history so that people who don't think to ask the question that I just asked will really know the truth. And I thought, you know, you have to know my humor. He's not, you know, he enlisted in the Coast Guard, did very well, he's doing fine, you know. But I thought that was like not profound, but it was pretty, you know, it was a pretty good conversation. And this conversation, you're not going to really have with a teenager much. But, you know, he just said, why do we have to have it? And I said, and that's just one reason why we have it. He goes, how? I said, I think, John, due to your DNA, I think that you will find that it is not 100% counting. He goes, oh. He said, well, maybe I'll do that. So, but I think that, you know, at least he asked the question, you know, and I think by what you're doing, you're making us all ask questions, not just the kids, you know, and I don't know whether that came from the club or what, or the Black History Club. Oh, that was, I think Brianna Vivas was one of the class, his ex-girlfriend. He wanted, you know, he did not understand why you know, American history class. Well, now you know why, because that's just one small misconception. What I'm not trying to, you know, lecture here, but what I'm trying to say is that when you do what you do, you might be surprised at the people who start asking questions. You know, you probably didn't know that about John, but I'm telling you and sharing it with you now.
One thing that Faith said earlier with the classrooms and with the African American studies, one of the things I loved was the fact that there was no curriculum, which was why she was able to see the local stuff around. And I think that definitely inspired you more than like having like you sort of broader spectrum, just what was right there close to home. And I think that teaches so much more than anything else.
Yeah, and my teacher was very hands-on in that way. Like he let us have a lot of free reign in that class. Of course, we had assignments and deadlines and things like that, but we had a lot of free range on what we wanted to study. And then the next year, he was my teacher for AP research. He also is the advisor of the club, and he is my teacher for AP research. And in that class, he helped me. I wrote a 5,000-word paper on the impact of post-traumatic slave syndrome on the North Fork, which is this kind of ideology that a lot of people, especially Black people, are still dealing with the issues of slavery now, generations later, like mental issues from it. So he helped me with that paper. So yeah, his name is Brian Holt. He actually is a student at Riverside.
This teacher sounds awesome.
Yeah, he's my favorite teacher. He's the best, and he's been my mentor in so many ways.
I know Brian, he's not afraid of tough conversations. He really is not. I don't think he is anyway. And when you talked about the slave cemetery, you know, that was a big brouhaha down in Orient. You know, there were people who were there and said there was no slaves there. And they shot all kinds of equipment to try to, you know, go through and see if they were there or not. And there were never any slaves. Or yeah, there were. There were. My grandparents told me about it. My grandparents immigrated from Poland in the 1800s. And they told me, and you know, they're not gonna, why would they lie? They're from Poland, you know. He said, yeah, there was slaves there. But, you know, sometimes it takes some investigation for people to believe what's right in front of their face. But I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So you've done so many amazing things and had such success. It's wonderful that Greenport has kind of embraced what you've been doing. I'm sure it was never easy. I'm sure there were a lot of struggles along the way. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like to have that Black Studies course for the year and then have it no longer be offered?
Yeah, it was definitely hard. I feel like, well, our class was only 5 kids, so that's why they couldn't continue it because nobody else signed up next year and I couldn't take it again. So it was definitely difficult not being in a class every day that gave me that outlet and that freedom to research that topic. It was hard, but I also, like I said, I had the AP research class next year that gave me that outlet. But for the other kids, I'm sure it was difficult, but 3 of them graduated, so there are only 2 of us left. But yeah,
Is it in the catalog for like students like to register for in the future if there's a cohort? No, they took it out of the catalog.
Yeah.
It's a pretty small school. The high school is only going to be. What,
The
350?
whole school is
4,
like 680.
That's pre-K,
Yeah.
12. But
Yeah.
one building, yeah. But
Yeah.
Faith, you have such deep roots in your community. You've constructed such an amazing atmosphere at school, and you're going on to this beautiful college. Like, do you have any thoughts about like leaving where you are and maybe your legacy, or is there a legacy, or do you expect young people that you're inspiring to take up where you left off? Do you have no expectation because you said it's difficult to advocate? So I'm just curious, like what your thoughts are. Like, it's such a blessing to see where you are, and you're like springboarding yourself into the next great thing, and you're building your own future, and you have such good ideas, and you have such a great support network with your community and your family. So just thoughts about like what you're gonna leave, and what are you concerned about what will go on, and then where you're springboarding to. I just can't imagine what you're gonna do next at college. So
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be hard for like the legacy of like the club and a youth ambassador coming to the table. Like, it's going to be hard for that to happen because, like, my story, if you want it, if you want it, you're going to want it, and you're going to fight to have it, and you're going to do the work. But there's not really many kids that are doing that. Like, trust me, I've tried to force them, and it's difficult to get teenagers to do things, especially when like our school, because it's so small, if for everything to run, everybody has to be in everything. So everyone's so stretched thin that it's hard to pull people from different things and get people to hone in on this one thing. And that's kind of what I was there for. But I hope that people learn from what I do, and that people still go to the Juneteenth celebration and go to coming to the table meetings. And like, you weren't there, but Amy, one of the students from school, came to the coming to the table meeting, and it was really nice. And she shared a lot of thoughts, and like, I hope she continues doing stuff like that. But
coming to the table a little bit.
Oh yeah, so it's a national racial healing organization, but the North Fork has its own chapter, and it's held every first or second Monday of the month. First Monday of the month from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at Clinton Memorial AME Zion Church.
And all ages.
Yes, it's all ages. So I'm always the youngest person there. Yes, anybody can come. You don't have to be in the group. You don't have to register or anything. It's basically a circle where we talk about difficult issues, and it's all races, everyone trying to just understand each other. And the ultimate goal is to eliminate discrimination and to heal people's racial wounds, because we live in a country where like we are taught to think certain ways in a lot of discriminatory ways. So it's kind of trying to help that and to like get rid of the transgenerational struggles that we all have mentally when it comes to race issues. So yeah, it's all ages. Like, we sit in a circle, we talk to each other. It's very grounding, and we have like a question that goes around, and everyone answers it, and it's like a safe space. And then there's a national chapter that does really cool things. They're doing right now a walk. It's like a Harriet Tubman walk. It's from somewhere in America all the way to Canada. Like, they do crazy things. So yeah.
What's the name of the church again?
Clinton Memorial AME Zion Church. It's on 3rd Street.
It's in Greenport.
Yes.
Oh yeah. You know, what struck me is the fact that you started to do this work, and it wasn't because of something that happened to you. It's something that happened to other people, back in history. And that usually, I mean, people can get energized when something bad happens to you. You know, you're going to go and you're going to try to fix it. But that wasn't it. You did not do it for just that reason, which I commend. But I want to ask you, and I interrupted you when you were speaking. I just wanted to know what that club was, because I know what I have to ask you. Did I interrupt somebody's question? Did you get your question answered? You want to tell us a little bit about your school board service? Because next month, Jasmine's going to tell us about it.
Yes. So I started in July, and basically what my role is, I meet with our principal, Mr. Kalish, the week before the meeting, and then I meet with Ms. Doyle, our superintendent, the week before the meeting, and I give a student report on like extracurricular highlights, sports, fundraising updates, and academic highlights and things like that. My meeting with Mr. Kalish is one-on-one, but then my meeting with Ms. Doyle is me and the other executive student council members, so like vice president, secretary, treasurer, where we all kind of bring our issues to her. Like she wants it to be a thing where she has a connection to students' voice, like directly. So we have a survey running where we collect issues that students have in the school or things they want to see, new AP classes they want to see, and things like that. And we bring the survey results to her as well as any like vocal things that people have told us. And then the report is on Tuesday night. That's kind of it.
I thought maybe we should just wait till Faith is 18 and get her to the board. Oh, you are? Well, then there is an election coming up. You know, and actually give us some pointers, but you do that anyway. So, yeah, I'm usually at Greenport's meeting and I hear Faith's report is extremely comprehensive. Very much so. I do appreciate that. You know, you're the pioneer on that, just like Miss Jasmine here is a pioneer on BOCES with our two gentlemen, board members. And we'll hear from them in June, so if you're not hearing anything, happily take you up for it, right? Yeah, you can come up with it. Give me a ride.
Ms. Doyle's on this.
I'm Ms. Doyle.
Does Ms. Doyle have any questions?
Susan.
Hi, Faith. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm proud of you as always. Faith
Thank
really
you.
has a way of making complex issues accessible and taking action. And, you know, she can you hear me okay?
No, right here.
You can't hear me?
Yeah, a little.
A little bit? Okay.
You're proud.
You want to shout?
I don't know why it's not.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
No, not easily.
All right, let me take my headphones out. How's that?
Good.
That's a little better.
Okay. Sorry about that. Hi, Faith. It's so nice to see you. And I just have a comment. I'm very privileged to get to spend some time with Faith. She represents our school so well. She brings complex issues in the appropriate manner and makes them very accessible and takes action and always puts students at the forefront, which is important in a school setting. I have to disagree with her. I think she is very aware of her audience and skillfully navigates that. I think she might be talking about her little sister, Hope, when she talks about audience. Is Hope there?
No, she's too
No, okay. But she's your legacy. She'll carry that on. But we are just so proud of Faith and everything she does in our district, and we know that she's going to continue to thrive. So I appreciate you all having her there representing us so well, because she is going on to great things. Thank you.
Is there anything else that has any question? Faith is obviously an open book here. And I told her that she came, if there's anything that are uncomfortable, she didn't have to talk about it. But fortunately, that did not happen. If anyone else has any comments or questions, I'd love to hear them. Yeah.
So I've heard your name pretty much everywhere. And I was pretty excited to hear you like actually speak as person. And I actually heard, you know, Ollie, right? You did
yes, the
yeah. I don't know where I was going.
So okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions or comments that they would like to address? Because he's going to be in great demand, and this might be your only.
This might be the last time we get.
This is that without paying. We might our next speaking engagement might be a big one. So if there's anyone else that has questions or comments, or even any suggestions, I mean, we're all, you know, I mean, she obviously takes suggestions very well too. If there's anyone that has any, please speak now.
I think you talked about it when you were again, you worded yourself quite well at the legal and voters talk where the schools came in. Kids were talking about each issues that are facing the district. And of course, cell phones came up. Can you talk about how that's affected the Greenport students? It's like, oh my God, like how are kids dealing with that, or any other issues that are particular to Greenport that you had difficulty with or success with? Hopefully successful.
Yeah. The cell phone issue, I feel like it hasn't really been an issue. It's honestly been way better. Like I like that I don't touch my phone for hours because I'm usually always on my phone, and I feel like it helps me focus a lot. And a lot of other kids have said that too. Like I know I'm like a nerd who likes to not focus on my phone and do things like that, but the kids that like usually are always on their phone and stuff, they're engaging, and I think it's a lot better. It's a better environment. It's been positive, but we knew it.
For any chance you want to make it forward to UPC?
You have to do things for graduation. Huh? I think you have a few things you have to do before graduation. Yeah. But I don't know. Faith does not have business cards, I don't think. I don't know what her availability is, but certainly if she wants to share her number, her email, I'm sure you wouldn't be upset if anybody here emailed you or anything like that.
In all seriousness, I was making a joke about that, but I do have a female student in my only class that has a lot of the same passions on diversity team that I think she would benefit greatly from speaking to someone that is as grounded as you.
Yeah,
especially so I really would enjoy getting contact.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'm going to say that the one thing I'm very happy about is that we do have a very multicultural high school in Greenport. Unfortunately, I did not realize it was very African Americans. I'm sorry, I did not realize that. I thought it was 20%, but and I am assuming, this is my last question, I am assuming that there, and I might be wrong, that in the school itself, within the different groups, minority groups, that there isn't a great deal of, I guess, strife or arguments or dislike. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I think that. What do you mean, like between the cultures, or
between cultures, between African Americans, Caucasians?
Yeah, so I feel like, especially between like Hispanics and African Americans, I feel like it's not really thought, like no one's really thinking about that. There's definitely a lot of things, like a lot of people saying racial slurs. It's very like normalized and desensitized now, and not just in school, like just in general in the world, it's very desensitized nowadays. And that goes on a lot, but no, I don't think there's really any of like fighting between races or anything. I feel like Greenport, there's not really like the sight of color like between the students, which sometimes that's a really good thing, but also sometimes it can be a bad thing when you don't realize your privilege and things like that. But for the most part,
well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm very glad to hear that. It's a little mini melting pot, I think. And, that's why. So, but no one else has, and I'm sorry I talk so much, but I know Faith, and I know what she does, and I wanted you all to hear her story and to ask questions. Because you're not going to have that opportunity. I don't think there's too many students on Long Island that are doing the amount of work that you are. I don't think. I don't know them if there are. But I think that having student board members is a great thing. I think you're the great start. You're the great start. I will tell you on June 4th, our ESBOCES ex officio board members will be there, and you will hear their experience with the 15 of us. Well, there's almost 20 of us around the table. And I think it's going to be. Very, very interesting to hear what you have to say about us. You can say anything you want.
Yeah, earn your way out.
For college, so I went to like my orientation thing this weekend, and they told me that there's a class where like I get to study like culture in Harlem. So like, yeah, there's so many different classes that I get to take, and like first year seminars that are about like colored women in literature. Like there's so many things that I'm really excited.
Anyone else?
You living on campus?
Yes, definitely.
Mr. Welch, you want to say anything?
Oh, no, I say stuff to her all the time.
Well, whatever you said, it worked.
I'm just very proud. I'm very proud of Faith. She knows that I've been hard on her. You know, as a parent, you want your kid to be perfect, right? So I was very hard on her early. She's had it the hardest out of all of our children. I didn't let her watch cartoons, and I tried to like take her away from being a kid. So you're not making none of the mistakes I've made. But I'm very thankful of where she is now in her life. She's still a kid. She's still, you know, leaving the toilet seat messy, leaving her grass, you know, her makeup's all around the house. She's still a kid, but she has a passion. You know, she's gonna go places that I've never been. I'm very thankful for her her outlook on life. I've said to her over and over again, and protection is the biggest thing I stress to her a lot, is that, you know, in a small community, you're not exposed to a lot of different things. When you go onto a national platform, it turns into something very different. So that's my prayer for her, that she's protected and that she understands that. Yeah, that's all.
Vanessa, anything you want to say? You're smiling over there.
I'm so proud of her.
I am too.
And I follow her. Yes, we love that. My little girl.
Well, if there's no other questions, I'm sorry. Do you have questions?
I was just going to say, as you exit, right, the secondary, the public school life here, what's something that you want to see us educators either continue to do or really focus on as the next group of students? I think giving your students more free rein in like classes that you can, of course, like a lot of science and math courses are kind of strict, but like being able to let your kids discover things that they like and like have that curiosity like I was allowed to, like even though there's not many classes don't have a curriculum and you're just going with the flow, but being able to have that freedom, I think allowed me to find what I really can. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Maria gave me this today. It's called The Portrait of a Graduate. You all know we're going to have new learning standards. The regions are going to be phased out. There'll be other pathways, which, you know, might be a good thing. The portrait of a graduate is that you're academically prepared, a creative innovator, critical thinker, an effective communicator, a global citizen, reflective, and future focused. What do you think?
Check.
Well, thank you, Faith. I'm sorry, like I said, I talked too much, but I really wanted to make sure that everyone got their questions asked. And I wanted to, you know, brag about Faith more than she'll brag about herself. So if we can get a picture, and there's cookies over there. Oh, yes. Well, I was gonna wait until I did the picture because it's in here, but that's okay. Hold on. Oh, wait. Look at this. Oh, look at this. BOCES swag bag. I don't know what's in it. Your BOCES swag bag. David and Maria put together. Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. Yeah, it's not easy to talk to a bunch of strangers. So, but anyway, thank you for putting on me.